right, gang, let's rock and roll. How's everybody doing today? I hope you are doing great. And I wish I actually, hold on, I just want to tap on here. Look at that. Quite a motley crew. I'm loving it. Love seeing all those smiling faces, permanent smiles for many of you. All right. Hey, so I hope you had a great weekend, and I hope that today will be another continuation to the start of this year. So a couple of questions I want to ask you guys, and I know many of you are coming right off the throes of our climb event. And for those of you who did not, I actually want to do a little bit of a review of just a topic that I think is critically important in relationship to building your business for 2022. So look, the first thing, foremost thing, look, we can talk about what do you want? We can talk about why do you want it? We can talk about a goal. We can talk about goals in general. We can talk very specifically goals. We can talk about plans and the blueprints for our success. We can speak to and talk to specifically regarding your schedule and the things that you should be doing. And that's really so much of the foundation. Of course, we would add mindset, skills, disciplines, and some of the strategies and tools that we would use for that. But with that, right, as I'm looking at some of the great people on here, like Wanda Allison and Shannon Porter, and some of you guys, I'm so grateful to have you on this call. And as we're looking at this stuff, guys, I really want you to think about two things. One, I want you to think about the goals that you set. And number two, I want you to write down the word goals, and I want you to think about that. And I want you to write down the word, and I want you to think about your values. So there's two specific things I want you to pay close attention to. It is so evident to me that when I work with top producing agents, I watch them either get really focused on their values along with their goals, or what usually ends up happening is that they're highly focused on their goals. And the scary part about that is that when they're focused on their goals of achievement, not the goal of creating the value or supporting their values, but really the focus point of their goals and the achievement of those specifically in business. And we want you to have both. I want you to have both. But one of the things that I know, and I didn't come up with this little phrase, but I think that it's relevant, and that is that you could be at the top of the mountain of achievement. And yet the fact is that if you feel completely unfulfilled at the top of the mountain, that is like the ultimate failure, right? It's that maybe you've achieved everything economically, or you're on the path of the economics, and yet then you feel completely disconnected from the values that you value most. Now, look, people often ask, well, what do you mean by values? Values could be things like your time. Values could be things like you as a father or a mother. It could be the value of your intimacy with your significant other. It could be the value of your health and your vitality. It could be the value of growing and learning and developing and becoming more. So the key factor here, gang, is to ensure the fact that you look at the things that you value most, also in relationship to what it is that you want to achieve, meaning from the standpoint of the goals, specifically the goals of business, and making sure that those are in alignment. Because what you don't want to be is that guy or gal at the top of the mountain of success, and you're looking back and you are literally, your life becomes a life of warning, not a life or a life of example. And when we get to a space where our life is built based on us protecting not only our dreams and our goals, but along with protecting that, we're protecting our greatest values, life becomes pretty extraordinary. So again, I go back to the question, what are your goals? But more importantly, what are your values? So what do you value? I've done this for years where I'll pull out a journal or a notepad and I'll talk about within myself, really, what do I value? Guys, I've written down things. There's kind of an ongoing joke between Jennifer and myself, and to where people will say, what do I buy you for a holiday or for Christmas or something of that sort? And Jennifer will say, you're so difficult to buy for. And I always say, look, it's pretty simple, because these are my greatest values. I want adventure. I want meaning, adventure. I want meaning, and I want a memory. So for me, what means the most to me is memories that are meaningful, that have an adventure around them. So I just, like, for me, that again is a tremendous value. Well, look, you can be rich and poor and create meaningful memories and adventure. You don't have to be rich to do that, right? So the thing that I want to make sure of is that you don't lose your greatest values in relationship to the wealth, the abundance, and the creation of business that you're doing. Take a step back and recognize that you cannot allow your values to be disappearing in your life on the quest for just simply the achievement of dollars. Now, look, at the end of the day, both are critically important, right? Because if you are not creating the dollars in this business, that is problematic. So I want to go back to just a quick review of one thing that I thought was very, very important in relationship. And it's where I want to spend the majority of our time today. Some of the notes that I had written down earlier today and yesterday were in relationship to this process. And I think that one of the things that we have to acknowledge, and if you heard this because you attended Climb, it's just a short little segment. And I have to tell you, I wonder if you really heard it because it was so meaningful and important. And if you didn't hear it, well, I want to make sure you hear it. And if you did hear it, I want you to hear it again because it's that important. So let's just give the acknowledgement that the world has really changed. And I know that we can all say, well, duh, George, of course the world has changed. But I can remember back in early on in my career where I would get on a phone. In fact, I can see the building is directly over here. I'm looking at the building. It's building number 7 in this complex that we work out of here in Utah. That's called Union Park. And I'm looking at that building. I would walk into that building, and it was in the early days when not even Realogy and other big companies actually were involved. And I worked for the local franchise, the Webbers. Some of you may know them. And I worked for them, and they owned a Coldwell Banker. And I'm reminiscing as I'm looking over, as I remember often every morning walking into that building as a new licensee. Well, I'd walk into that building as a new licensee, and this is nearly 30 years ago, guys. I mean, 30 years ago, I'd walk in that first year. I would walk in and I would make calls every single day. Well, it got to a point early on in my career where I recognized that I needed to make a tremendous amount of contacts. And I can remember that I would make 100 plus contacts a day. And my objective was always to get 5 leads and to set somewhere between 2 to 3 appointments. And the combination of that became a reality for me. And what was interesting is I would be pushing the buttons. I wasn't using a dialer. I wasn't using any sophisticated technology. I was just simply making phone calls, pushing the buttons, and I was making 100 contacts a day. Now, people used to ask me, like, well, George, how long did it take you to make that many contacts? And what was interesting is it would take me about 4 hours a day to make 100 contacts. And now here's the thing that's interesting. If I dialed on a phone today and said that I was going to make 100 contacts, it would probably take me somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 to 7 hours in today's marketplace. Now, the reason it would take me 6 to 7 hours in today's marketplace, calling mostly at the time, just listed, just sold, basically cold phone calls in the sense of, hey, there's a listing around you, or we just sold a home around you. Or, hey, do you rent or do you own? Great, I'm a local real estate agent. Want to see if I can help you get into a new home or help you sell your home. But at that time, the answer ratio was off the chart, right? There was no do not call. There was no screening of phone calls. There was no, well, what number is calling me? I don't know if I want to answer that or not. Well, today we'd have to be living in a box. I mean, we'd have to be completely ignoring the realities of today's world, that we know that people are screening calls. It's just like yesterday, my own son, who went into a Planet Fitness with my daughter, wrote down some referrals. Well, what happens is yesterday, Mackenzie, Dylan, and Mackenzie, Dylan, and Ethan, all 3 of them were written down as references or possible opportunities to sell a gym membership to. So every time one of them we were all together, and one of them was getting a call that said Planet Fitness. And then the next, they wouldn't answer it because they got to screen the call. And then the next person, Kenzie would lift up her phone and go, oh, guess what? Planet Fitness is calling, or LA Fitness, not Planet Fitness. LA Fitness is calling me. And then then Ethan lifts up his own, and LA Fitness is calling him. And my point to that is this: they screened the call and no one got to talk to anybody. So the question then remains is that we know that the phone and we know that the door are incredibly good vehicles for success. But the question I'm going to pose to you is, are you truly being as wise and efficient as you should be in today's marketplace in relationship to engaging in a conversation? See, I have been of the mindset for now years, and I've heard a number of other people who picked this statement up, which is this: meaningful conversations. So the challenge is how do you have meaningful conversations? If you're making some notes, I would ask you to write this down. Meaningful engagement. Meaningful engagement. How are you engaging, right? My value is I want meaning, adventure, and a great memory. That's a value to me, right? So, how do I create meaningful conversations? How do I create meaningful engagement with another human being? Because the only way that you succeed in this business at a high level is your engagement with people. We are in the people business. And the problem is that so many of us get fixated on the idea that picking up a phone and dialing it may be the only way that you could do business. And I'm not here to say that you can't make business and make business happen that way. As those of you, again, who attended the climb event, I love it. In fact, people were worried on the last day as to whether Alma would be able to take time and have enough time to set an appointment. And it was so cool to watch within that room. I know many of you were there, but in less than 20 minutes, he calls two for sell by owners and sets appointments with both of them. So we know that appointments can be set from the phone, but it's only one way that we can engage with people. Because as we all know, there's also a limited number of for sale by owners in a given day or week. We also know there's a limited number of expired listings, especially in today's market where inventory is a reality that we have to deal with, the lack of it. So with that being said, the question then remains, how will you engage at a higher level with the people that you're supposed to work with? And that's what I want to speak to today. So over the next 15 minutes, what I want to share with you is some avenues and some ways in which you could do that at a higher level. So let's first and foremost at least address the fact that the number one building block, write this down, the number one building block of my career is to build my sphere of influence. Now you can call it sphere, centers of influence, past clients, database, whatever you want to call it. But my number one building block to my future is the way in which I build my sphere. Now, look, as much as you may believe that, agents are just sitting and making calls and making a few $1,000,000 a year, it is not the reality in regards to the marketplace that I live in. What I mean by that, if I name names like Tina Hare, Brian Burnett, right, guys that both made over $3 million this year, they did not make it just because they sat and waited, and not just because they made phone calls. They did other things that they've built up to, because the single most important asset that they have ever built in their lifetime is their sphere of influence. So, how are you engaging with them? And what I want to do is I want to give you just a handful of ways in which you can engage. Just as I did this morning, just as I will later today, I'm going to give you those same things because I believe they are relevant. And they have never been more relevant than they are in today's marketplace. Never have they been more relevant. So with that, I hope you have a notepad. I hope you're taking some notes. But let's just talk first and foremost about engagement. Let's get the first one, which we've talked about. Make phone calls, number one. Number two, we obviously want to make sure that we're mailing something out on a consistent fashion. And we will try to follow it up with some type of engagement with them of conversation. We'll get to that in a second. Third, I want to ensure the fact that you're not only doing the mailings, but you're sending out emails. All right. But now we turn to some other things, right? We're calling, we're mailing, we're emailing. Now let's get into some meat, right? One, what type of client appreciation are you doing for that sphere, which is another avenue of engagement? I would recommend that you're doing at least 2 of those per year, some type of level of engagement. But now let's get to what I really ultimately want to talk about, which is the other levels of engagement. And that is this: every single day, you need to have a minimum, as we all know within the company, it's the 12 steps to the summit of success. We talk about making 150 contacts. And what I probably would love to change that, where it says 150 meaningful contacts a week. So each week, how are you engaging with people? Yes, I recognize some of it will be by phone, but now let's go to 2 or 3 other ways. Next on that list, I'm not going to keep track. You guys can keep track. Next on the list is emailing. 5. I got Judy tell me 5. All right, number 5 on the list. All right, but let's start with texting. All right, but now let's break down this texting. We can text, obviously, a written message. So write down a written message, write down A, B, and C under it. We can write down a written message under texting. We can do a voice memo or a recording by just our voice. And I know that people say, well, wait, what if I don't have an Apple phone? Great, then send a little recording in another way. If you have an Apple phone and you want to send an actual recording to someone who has a Samsung, then take a little recording on your voice memo on your phone, where you can do recording, so I hope all of you are getting the daily messages that you get from the company. And it's the same thing. You would record that and send it to your client. And I think that could be always keep those essentially less than 60 seconds. And then the next one on A is the written, B is the voice, and C is the video, and sending out a video. And look, gang, what I'm trying to get at this point is I'm trying to get engagement. I'm trying to create a conversation, right? And I'm trying to have a conversation about, specifically, I'm trying to have a conversation about real estate. And people say, well, then what do I do with that? What I want you to do with that engagement, whether it be by text, through video, through voice memo, or written text, or a phone call, or then responding to your email. What I want you to do is I want you to create engagement and interaction so that you can set up an appointment to ask them this question. So write down this question. How are you using real estate? How are you using real estate to build your financial future? No matter who I'm working with or not working with and want to work with, is I'm going to ask them the question, how are you using real estate to build your financial future? Now, let me expand on the question. I can say it other ways, like, what are you doing with real estate to build your future? How are you using real estate for your retirement? How are you using real estate to create a bright future for yourself economically? How are you using real estate to create wealth for your family that you can pass on for generations? How are you really building your future? And how are you using real estate to do that? Now, look, in that question as I sit down, whether it be an engagement of a voice memo to them and they say a written number back, but just imagine, like, how are you corresponding? Now go to the next level, number D on this list of texting, or you could put a whole new section, however you want to do it. It's social media. All right. So social media. Now, look, you can hit likes on your social media. You can write a little typing of how great it is on social media. Or what you could really do is amplify this up at a whole other level of interaction. And you could send them a quick little video on your Instagram or your Facebooks. Right. And I love what Colton Lindsay had to say this last week, where he talked about, look, if you're probably 45 or 50 years of age, Facebook's going to be the place where you're going to spend a majority of your time. If you're probably between the ages of 30 and 40, maybe 25 to 40, you're going to be using Instagram. If you're under age 25, it's almost always going to be TikTok and Snapchat. So look at the demographics as to where you're working and your own personal age. Depending on what your age is where you should be focusing your time on social media. Now, you may say, wait a second here, I've been told that social media doesn't get me almost any business. Well, it probably doesn't if you're just sitting there posting pictures of a plate of food or a nice little sunset, then that's all that you're doing on it. But if you got really serious about your social media and all of a sudden you looked at the social media of the person you're about to call and you leave them a voice memo on a text that says, hey, I just noticed you guys got back from a great trip from Disneyland. Or I noticed that I just noticed that, someone in your family passed away. I wanted to reach out, give you my condolences and know that I'm here. And I just want you to know how grateful I am that you're in my life. Guys, this is about being meaningful. This is about being authentic. This is about having legitimate conversations that matter. And so when you start recognizing, if you're resisting prospecting, ask yourself, wait a second here. What I'm really resisting is meaningful conversations. Because meaningful conversations require you to be vulnerable. Meaningful conversations require you to be authentic. Meaningful conversations have to, need to show you that show them that you're transparent, that you're real, that you're honest, that you're open, that you have an open heart. And that's what is the requirement of a meaningful conversation. Not just, hey, I'm calling to see when you plan on moving. Oh, you're not? Okay, well, all right, well, talk to you later. You say, well, no, I ask a few more questions. Right. Any meaningful conversations? More than like, how long have you lived at this address? Is there not more to the concept of conversation that you could have? And I know the answer is, of course, for all of us, it's yes. So again, when we go back to saying, okay, how are we using social media? When you're using social media, do you see a really cool thing that someone posts? Do you reach out to them, or do you just hit like and go, that's cool? Or do you go, hey, yeah, great, post the, hey, that's cool. But then maybe you could DM, direct message them and send them a quick little video that says, hey, so cool to see you live your dreams. So excited for you. Just know I'm here. If you ever need my help, it's George Morris. I'm the local real estate agent. I'm always here to help you build your wealth. Because all of a sudden there's meaning. And the obsession of social media, you have to recognize that no one's going off of it. So how are you using it to benefit you economically? And if you have meaningful conversations, whether it be through a voice memo or whether it be through a video in social media, if it's texting, whether it's a text that's a written text in your regular texting, or a voice memo or a video, guys, we have got to get past the idea that we are not willing to allow ourselves to sometimes maybe not look perfect, to not look like we have it all figured out. We have to get past the idea that it's okay, that we have to be authentic, real, vulnerable, open-hearted, because that's how you garner great relationships where people say, you know what? I'm going to choose you as my agent, despite the fact that I know other ones, because you have created meaningful conversations with them. So imagine if every single day you had 30 meaningful interactions with people, whether it was a video, and guys, 30-second videos, there should be 20 of those going out a day, not a week, 100 of them a week. You should be having multiple voice memos that are going out, just saying, hey, I just want you to know I'm thinking about you. Because the reality check is, gang, is so few people are interacting with one another. They, like I said, are putting up the roadblock of answering their phone calls, just like my kids do who are getting calls from LA Fitness. The reality is that each and every single one of us have a role and responsibility as a leader to find a way to engage and interact with another human being. You cannot win the game of real estate waiting for business. And as I've said, something you may want to write down, there's only 3 ways to get business in today's world, and it's the same 3 ways way back decades ago. Number 1, you wait for business. And sometimes we can wait a really long time for business to happen. Number 2, we can go out and buy the business. And I certainly know that we can all go out and buy leads, internet leads, marketing leads. We can go buy the leads and try to convert them. But either way, it is incredibly expensive to buy the leads, and it is incredibly expensive when the losses that one may get in relationship for waiting for the business to come to you. The one that has been proven for nearly 3 decades in my life is the fact that I can go out and get business. So I'm going to challenge you guys today that if you really want to live your dreams, you have to go out and get the business, which means you have to have meaningful conversations. And what I have found in my lifetime is that if I'm having meaningful conversations with individuals, I have found that I protect my greatest values. I find that I enjoy the business more. I find that I wake up with an open heart and completely excited about the day because I know that my conversations will be meaningful. Not just lots of rejection, not lots of people just telling me no, not lots of people hanging up on me, because people don't hang up on meaningful conversations. So, how meaningful are your conversations? How heartfelt are your conversations? How memorable are your conversations? Do people even remember that you called? And so when you start looking at all the ways we can create engagement, just ask yourself, are you really stepping forward in today's market with engagement? Guys, if you haven't figured out also that your business is under attack, every single aggregator from Zillow to Realtor.com to every single possible avenue, they are trying to extract a relationship with your potential client and cut you out of it. And if they can get you back into it, they charge you for it. So if you want to win the game of real estate, you want to win the game. I have many of my managers on this call. You want to win the game of recruiting? Start having meaningful conversations, engaging with people through whether it be through text or social media, and not just in a written form. Not just a written form. Send a voice memo, send a video. So easy to do it on the social media platforms. It is so easy to do it in texting platforms. And here's what's crazy, guys. The open rate on any and all those things is off the chart. The chart. And so again, I'm not suggesting that you don't send an email. I'm not suggesting you don't send them a voicemail. I'm not like through Slide Dial or Callfire, which are great companies to do mass texting by voicemail. I'm not suggesting that you shouldn't do other avenues like emailing and mailing or client appreciations. I think you should do all of those. But what I also know is that if you're waiting for business, buying business, and not going out and getting it, that is a problem. And if you are stuck in the past of, well, that's just the way that we've done. I'll finish up with this last little story. It's quick. It's just, and many of you heard it. It's the daughter of a mother who said to her mother one day, "Hey, Mom, I'm just curious. Why do we always cut the ham in half when we cook it?" She called up her mother because she was cutting the ham in half, making a dinner for her family. Well, all of a sudden, the mother says, "You know what? That's a great question. I'm not sure why we do it. I'll call grandma and I'll ask. I'll let you know." She calls up her mother, which is the daughter's grandmother, and says, "Hey, why do we always cut the ham in half when we cook it?" And the grandmother said, "Oh, well, we just cut it in half because the oven that I have doesn't fit the pan that I like to cook it in." And so the moral of the story is simply this: just because we've always done it one way doesn't mean we continue to do it the same way. So there you see two generations of cutting this ham in half just because simply that's the way they did it. So that's the way we've always done it. One of my favorite things I see in the company, oftentimes in our company, Everest Enterprise, people will say things like this, because here we are going on our second decade, 13 years in the business as a brokerage and an owner in the company, and all the different. And people will say, "Well, yeah, but that's how we've always done it." Exactly. But if we are not willing to pivot, have enough versatility and adaptability, that is a problem. And gang, the world, if you have not noticed, has changed and evolved. Whether you think for good or for bad, it has evolved. So has the way in which you are creating engagement, the way in which you prospect, have you changed the path and the way in which you do these things? And if you haven't evolved, if you haven't changed, if you haven't gotten better, if you haven't risen or raised the engagement level, that is a significant problem. Because if you don't change it, nothing's going to change. And the reality is, if you want to increase your income, if you want to do more deals, if you want to have more success, you have to change the way in which you're engaging with people. Remember that. Again, I go back to, it's not enough just to hit a like on the social media. Send a DM, a direct message to them that says, "Wow, fantastic. Just know I'm always here if you need anything from the game of real estate. I hope you're building a great future for yourself economically. Know that I'm always here." And here's what's so crazy. You'll send that voice memo or that video in social media. Here's what's so cool. They will respond in like. And now you start an interaction. Now you start to be able to ask them the great question: how are you building real estate to build your financial future? Guys, in closing, I just would challenge each and every one of you. I would invite you to recognize that you can change the whole course of the way in which you do business if you will change the course in the way in which you engage with another person. And if you want to amplify your business, then amplify the way in which you converse with people and talk to people. Look, there's no hidden secret here, gang. It takes time. It'll take a few mistakes. Here's the other thing. Don't send the perfect voice memo. Don't send the perfect video, because if you do that, you won't get engagement. It's okay if you mess up your first sentence and say what I meant to say was this, or you say the wrong word and then correct it with another word, or you say an or you say an a few too many times. That's normal life and interaction, gang. That's how it works. So if you're going to be normal, you're authentic, real, honest, open, vulnerable, then make sure that the messages are the same. Make sure that when converse and you converse with another person, you recognize that it's okay if you hiccup. It's okay if you make fun of yourself. It's okay if you make a mistake in the video or the voice memo. Send your real, authentic self. That's who needs to show up. That's how you create a greater layer of engagement. And when you create that greater layer of engagement, then all of a sudden you're doing more deals, you're having more conversations, you're getting more opportunities, and frankly, you're earning more money, which in turn allows you to truly fulfill, I believe, the destiny that each one of us has to live an extraordinary life. And look, each one of us, to do all that we want to achieve, everything we need and everything we want has some level of cost to it. There is an economic cost for everything, whether it's the, hey, I didn't have to work today because you have enough money, but it still costs you money. Or you say, let's go play catch with your son or your daughter, or your grandson or your granddaughter, or you want to help someone economically, or you need to go send something, pay for something, do something. It all costs money, gang. So let's elevate the way in which we're working in this marketplace. Let's elevate the way in which we're doing things, recognizing that this is a pretty simple business, but for some reason we love to complicate it. So stop complicating it. Go talk to people, converse with them, and have meaningful conversations through voice memos, through video, through face-to-face conversations, and of course the phone. And I can just tell you that if you do those types of things on a regular basis, if you are relentless in doing it, you will never worry about money again in this business. But if you wonder where the next deal is coming from, if you are concerned about what's happening, I am here to tell you it's because you're not creating enough engagement. Remember, some people will say, well, the inventory. Yes, the inventory may be an issue. What someone qualifies may be an issue. But the thing that's interesting is that if those are the only clients that you have, because the ones either that can't qualify or at the bottom rung of the standpoint of what they can buy out in the marketplace because things are so tight, it all comes down to the fact that you at times need to get a stronger group of clientele. Gang, I'll close with this. Back in 2008 and 9, when I was selling real estate full time, I was the #1 agent in the state of Utah. One of my dear friends and now one of our great agents and team leaders, Leah Kruger, I can still remember going to lunch with her one day in the middle of 08 and 09. And she said, George, do you realize that you're and she was one of the lead brokers of Coldwell Banker at the time. She was trying to recruit me way back in the day. And she said, do you realize you're the #1 agent in the state of Utah? And I said, actually, I said, really? And I kind of smiled at her. And I said, yes, I was aware of that. And we had a good laugh about that. And I remember back in the day that here was what it was interesting, guys. I was carrying a listing inventory of over 50 plus listings. 1 out of every 10 homes were selling. 1 out of every 10. So inventory was the issue. Now the issue is the lack of inventory. But no matter what, there's always going to be problems. But what I found is that if I wanted to have the 1 out of every 10 homes sell, and I wanted to have 10 closings a month, 5 buyers, 5 sellers, well, I need to carry a listing inventory of 50 plus homes. So I did, because I knew inventory was an issue. So if you recognize that inventory is an issue in the way of its lack today, do you have enough qualified clientele? Well, the only way you get a high level of qualified clientele is you get more engagement. So look, it's not enough, again, that you post just a fun little story in your social media. You have to engage with your social media. It's not enough that you just send out a mailer or a calendar for the year. It's not enough if you're going to raise the level of business you're going to do. So again, I invite you to recognize that the world has changed. The way in which prospecting is done has had to have some evolution to it. And you're having to use some of the great technologies that are available to get a higher level of interaction and engagement. And as you do that, everything will come together. Guys, it is always my pleasure to be with you. I hope you recognize that you're in some of the most greatest times in history. And I would just hope that you're taking advantage of it. I want you to know how committed I am personally to helping you, how committed our leadership team is to helping you, and recognizing that there is really nothing about this business that you cannot learn as you go along. And there is nothing about this business that you cannot do. And if that is the case, go live the life that you're destined to live in this game we call real estate. Go take advantage of all the opportunities that are there by raising your engagement levels and raising your prospecting levels, because you can. Because you can, and I promise you, you can. All right, gang, have an extraordinary week. I hope this helps you even get more onto the right track. Have an extraordinary week. Finish it, start it strong, finish it strong, make the engagement happen. Get on the phones, get on the videos, get on the texting, get on the voice memos, and let's go take the real estate world by storm. All right, guys, have a great week, and I'll talk to you soon.